Well, it's so difficult to talk about international cricket when there's the IPL going on in the background. And the thing with the IPL is that it's so fast moving that you record a podcast one day and it is outdated in like 12 hours or a day. Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Corner podcast with me, Vatsal Vora. I was brainstorming on what kind of podcast I want to record for this weekend for the viewers and the listeners, and I was not able to come up with an idea as such. But then I realized I wanted to talk a lot about the upcoming World Test Championship and the Ashes series, which is the most how shall I put it, which is the most looked forward to series after the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which was prior to the IPL. And the Ashes is quite an interesting one because Australia have already announced the squad, so I thought why not dedicate an entire episode to the Australians for a change. And I'm here to talk about how the Australians are getting on before the Ashes, and I'm going to look at their star batsmen, and then if this episode gets good traction, I'll probably talk about their bowlers as well in a different episode altogether. So the Australian squad was announced like a month back. Now it's the 20th May when I am recording this, and the Australian squad was announced on the 19th of April, and they announced the squad for the World Test Championship Final and the Ashes series. And their squad has some interesting bowlers and batsmen. I've already covered them in one of my previous episodes, so you can check that out. But they have a good core of batsmen, and I'm here personally going to talk about Marnus Labuschagne, Steve Smith and David Warner, because I feel like those are the three main batsmen when it comes to the Australians. Yes, they do have other good batsmen in the squad, like Travis Head is in there. There's of course Usman Khawaja, who had a wonderful Border Gavaskar series in India. There's the returning Marcus Harris, and there's Matt Renshaw as well, with wicket-keeping options in the form of Alex Carey and Josh English. But I'm here to talk about Labuschagne, Smith and Warner, because those are the three players who are currently in action, playing some form of cricket or the other. I'll completely break this apart for the listeners right now. It's David Warner, who's playing in the IPL, who was playing in the IPL with the Delhi Capitals, because DC had just had their last game of the season today. Spoiler alert, they lost, but David Warner had a good outing. We'll talk about him later in this episode. And Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith are currently playing in the county championship here in England, so they are already preparing for the World Test Championship Final and the Ashes by getting used to these conditions, and both of them are doing really well, one more better than the other. But let's start with Steve Smith. Steve Smith decided not to play in the IPL this season. Well, he hasn't been one of those hard-hitting IPL players which will be known and remembered in years to come. The likes of Adam Gilchrist, the likes of David Warner and Andrew Stymons, Michael Hussey, Shane Warne and Shane Watson are kind of players who are remembered in the IPL, Andrew Simons to an extent as well. But Steve Smith has had a okayish legacy in the IPL. Well, he played for the rising Pune Super Giants side, which finished runners-up in one of their two seasons. So Steve Smith decided to come over to England, and he's representing Sussex, and he's currently playing against Glamorgan. And spoilers again, Marnus Labuschagne plays for Glamorgan as well. So Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne are against one another at the moment. But it's been a decent outing for Steve Smith at the moment here in England. Excuse me. I feel like Steve Smith has a lot more to offer to Sussex particularly. He's currently playing in his third game. He played against Worcestershire and Leicestershire. In his first game he scored just 30, and his second game against Leicestershire he scored just 3. But currently, whilst playing against the Glamorgan side, he scored a well-deserving 89. He was gone LBW bowled Harris, but an 89 of 183 deliveries, 10 fours and 1 6 shows the gritty, sheer determination of Steve Smith. This was particularly after Cheteshwar Pujara, the captain of Sussex, was dismissed on a duck. So it was a really good effort. As far as Steve Smith is concerned, he came in at number 5 for Sussex, scored a well-deserved 89, and this was the kind of score he really needed, because as we mentioned before, he wasn't playing much. Like, he didn't score much runs. Like, prior to this game, he scored like 33 runs in 2 games. He didn't get a chance to bat in the second innings in either of the 2 matches. So a well-made 89, I think that really puts him and gives him the confidence heading into the World Test Championship final, which is like in a 3 weeks time. So that's good preparations for him. It's also nice to know that he did bowl in his first 2 games against Worcestershire and Leicestershire. He did bowl against both of them. I'm just having a look whether he bowled in this game as well, and I don't think he did. Yeah, he didn't bowl against Glamorgan, but he has been given a bowl here and there. I don't see him bowling in the World Test Championship or in the Ashes, but yeah, it's one option that Australia have at their disposal, and it'll be good to see if they can make use of him if needed, because Australia usually lack a 6th bowling option. They have 4 good bowlers in the form of Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, Nathan Lyon, Cameron Green as their 5th bowler, but then they usually lack that 6th bowling option. Travis Head can be that 6th bowler if they ever need one. And Steve Smith, well, he has bowled a few overs here and there. Not sure whether he will be bowling, but there you go. He's getting used to that as well. So as far as preparations are concerned, I'll give Steve Smith a 5 out of 10 based on his current form. I am deducting a few points from his score out of 10 mainly because of his failure to score a big total in his first 2 games. But then again, you are in England, you are in completely new conditions, you're playing after 2 months, you were in India before that, and you still managed to score 33 runs. That's not too shabby, but then you expect more from a legendary test player, at least a modern legend in the form of Steve Smith. But this 89 runs will give him a lot of confidence, as I've already mentioned. So yeah, I'm really happy to see Steve Smith amongst the runs in the county championship. We'll be looking at him more as he continues to play for Sussex. But yeah, Steve Smith 5 out of 10 based on his current form for the preparation ahead of the Ashes series and the World Test Championship final. Someone who has been excellent for their county side is Marnus Labuschagne. Now, Marnus Labuschagne plays for Glamorgan, and personally for me, I look at Glamorgan scorecards and some of their highlights on YouTube and stuff like that pretty often, because I currently live in Swansea, and Swansea falls under the Glamorgan county setup. That's the only county team we have here in Wales, so it's something that I always look forward to, seeing Glamorgan how they do in this county championship in the T20 Blast, which one of the games I'm actually going to go and watch them, so that should be fun. But he's been really well. Now, similar to Steve Smith's early games for Sussex, Marnus Labuschagne played his first game in exactly a month back on the 20th of April against Durham, and he scored just 22 runs in the test match, 17 in the first innings, 5 in the second innings. He did get 4 for 81 though, so well, he's that 6th bowling option if Australia need. I completely forgot that he's a capable bowler himself, but yeah, there you go. So he's also getting in amongst the wickets, but just 22 runs. But then against Leicestershire, he made 64. And then after that, on the 4th of May, the Glamorgan side played Yorkshire, and that's where Labuschagne exploded into life. He scored 65 in the first innings, 170 not out in the second innings, and that was a completely brilliant performance and shows how well and how quickly Labuschagne has got used to these English conditions. Yes, the game at Leeds ended up in a draw, but that's not the main picture here. Like 170, that too in the second innings, gives you a lot of confidence, particularly in Leeds, which is really like one of the better places, like a proper test venue as well. So that's good to see. Then they played. Then he scored 42 at Cardiff against Worcestershire, and now he's currently playing against Steve Smith against Sussex, where once again he scored yet another century for Glamorgan. I think he scored a century in the second innings. He scored 138 of 244 deliveries, 16 fours and 4 sixes in that innings. So he's really playing really well. And it's not like he's playing in these English conditions for the first time. Yes, he's playing in these English conditions for the first time this season, but he's already played for Glamorgan previously. So I feel like he, amongst all the other Australians in the current squad, is more than capable of handling these English conditions from the get-go. So I feel like Marnus Labuschagne is Australia's main batsman. Now I know David Warner and Steve Smith are more important because of their past history and how much they have achieved in the test format, but Labuschagne, who is just 28 compared to Steve Smith and David Warner, is quite young. So I feel like he could be their main man because he has played for Glamorgan for a couple of seasons now. He's quite accustomed to these conditions, and already he scored 2 centuries in this county championship. So I think Labuschagne's really doing well. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 based on his current form for the upcoming Ashes series and for his preparations, that is. I think he's been excellent, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the World Test Championship final against India as well, because he didn't have the best time during the Border Gavaskar series. He did score a 63 not out against India in the final test match at Ahmedabad, but that test match ended up in a draw, and that was one of the most easiest pitches in relative terms during that series, because the first 3 test matches were spin for the spinners. It was really turning and gripping, whilst the pitch at Ahmedabad for the final test match was relatively easier to play in. It was much more batting friendly, and in those spinny conditions he did struggle. His highest score was like a 35 in the second test match, if I'm not wrong. So now that he's going to play against India, the same opposition which troubled him earlier in the year, to play against those same opponents in conditions where you are much more suited to, I think that should be really fun to see. And I expect him to play a big role if Australia want to win their first ever World Test Championship final and become the first country to win all the ICC trophies, that is the World Cup, the T20 World Cup, and the Champions Trophy, and now the World Test Championship as well. So I think Labuschagne will be equally important, if not more, for the Australians in the World Test Championship final than the Ashes. But I think his preparations are showing that he is capable of handling expectations really well, because Glamorgan is a relatively weak side in the county championships, and he's like their main batsman, and he's still able to play those big innings. Shows how good his temperament and confidence is growing, knowing that he's the main man. And if he can get that confidence in the Australian side, I'm sure he can perform instead of weighing down under expectations. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for Labuschagne's preparations ahead of WTC Final and the Ashes. Finally, let's talk about David Warner. And unlike Labuschagne and Steve Smith, David Warner is playing a completely different form of cricket, but he's excelling in that, and he's playing in the IPL. Well, he was playing in the IPL now. Let's talk about his IPL tenure in past tense. So he played for the Delhi Capitals, and yes, Delhi Capitals did not have the best of the season in the IPL. I think they finished second from bottom on 10 points. I think they only managed to win 5 games all season. They lost to the Chennai Super Kings earlier today, on the day I'm recording, that is, at least. But David Warner himself has had a great IPL season. 516 runs at an average of 36.87 and a strike rate of 131.6. He scored 6 scores of 50 and above. Did not get 100, but that's fine. And yeah, he was really good in this struggling Delhi side. I think he was their best batsman. Like 516 runs is a really good IPL season. I've always said this before, that anything above 500 is a really good IPL season, and you are probably one of your team's best batsmen. And I think David Warner has showed that. Now, Warner has always had great IPLs. He scored 432 last season. A bit of drop off in 2021, 195. But he played just 8 matches in that occasion. But 2020, 548. 2019, 692. That's the David Warner we all know. He bats up the order. He opens for all the side he's played for, be it Delhi Capitals this season, Sunrisers Hyderabad in his previous successful campaigns as well. He captains Delhi Capitals. Yes, his captaincy did see them finish second from bottom, but that's all right. We are talking about his batting, and 516 runs is a really good return as far as batting up the order is concerned. And he did have a few issues with the strike rate early on in the IPL. He was scoring at like a run a ball, a strike rate of like 110, 115, but then he really exploded, and the strike rate soared along with his runs and performance and ended up at 131.6. He scored 86 against the Chennai Super Kings on the 20th of May, which is today. 46 against Punjab Kings before that, and a 54 against Punjab Kings. So his last 3 scores in the IPL is 54, 46, 86. He also scored a 57 against the Kolkata Knight Riders a month back. So yeah, he's performing really well. Now, I'm not sure how good playing in the IPL helps you prepare for the Ashes and the WTC Final. Completely different format, completely different conditions, but at least seeing him perform well will give him confidence of having a good Ashes series, because let's be honest, he did not have the best times at the Border Gavaskar series. He barely played. I think he played just 2 test matches before having that freakish injury, like a fracture or something, which saw him miss the next 2 test matches, which promoted Travis Head to open the innings alongside Usman Khawaja. But seeing him perform well, seeing the David Warner of old, really gives me hope that he would be one of Australia's main batsmen, because you don't want to see him being there because he's David Warner. You want to see him perform at a higher level as well. So yeah, I think this is an ideal preparations as far as David Warner is concerned. Well, you would say that a much more ideal thing would be to follow the likes of Labuschagne and Steve Smith and play in these first-class games. But David Warner is one of IPL's biggest names. Like, one of the fan polls today called him the best overseas batsman that the IPL has ever seen. Now, the likes of Chris Gale and AB de Villiers would want to argue on that, but we are not here to talk about the IPL, are we? We are here to talk a lot about what David Warner wants to be, and I think this is much more of a confidence booster than preparations ahead of these 2 massive test series. And I think confidence is a big thing as far as Warner is concerned, because if he's confident, then you can expect him to give Australia those quick fire starts which he's synonymous with. And with the inclusion of David Warner in the squad, I think he will return to opening the innings alongside Usman Khawaja, which will drop Travis Head down to that number 5 spot, which was occupied by Peter Handscomb. Side note, even Peter Handscomb's playing for Leicestershire here in the county championships, but poor bloke did not get picked for the Ashes series or the World Test Championship. But yeah, keeping Handscomb aside, I think David Warner's been doing quite well in the IPL, but I can only give him like a 6 out of 10, because yes, morale boost is one thing, scoring runs is one thing, having a good score under your belt is one thing, but then you're playing T20, that too in India, which is not what you want to, not the same thing. You are going to play India, yes, but you are going to play them in England, and then you are going to play England in the Ashes series in England. But so yeah, 6 out of 10, much more morale boosting as I've mentioned, but judging by his form, I don't see him having those same struggles like he did at the Border Gavaskar Trophy. So yeah, this is a short podcast on Australia's preparations ahead of the WTC Final and the Ashes. Make sure you let me know what you think by tweeting at me at Mr. Vatsal Vora. You'll find Twitter link down in the description below, and this podcast is also available on YouTube. So if you're listening on YouTube, then make sure you're liking, sharing and subscribing. If you are listening this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, then make sure you're giving me those wonderful 5-star ratings. I'm so hyped about the World Test Championship Final and the Ashes, because the IPL's just got one more week, and once we are done with that, we can once again focus on international cricket, which I like covering on this podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you're as stoked and hyped as I am. Much more and plenty more episodes to come in the future, so make sure you're tuning in. This is me, Vatsal Vora, signing off. Ciao for now.